Hello everybody, welcome to Dulcimerica. My name is Futch. Thank you for joining me for part 7 of our continuing look at chord progressions. What are they, how to use them, and better yet, how to understand them. This is going to be a total of 9 weeks of study. That's probably the most I've ever invested in one subject, but there's so much to cover, and the feedback from you guys has been great. So thanks for watching and tuning in, and for being excited about this music nerd geeky stuff. It's really, really cool. So back in part 4 of our study, episode number 558, we looked at the movement of minor chords in a minor key. And we found out that we can move them, the 1, 4, 5, and so forth, just like we do in a major key. But that the minor 5 and the major 7 just didn't have the same sort of punch, the same resolution as their counterparts in that major key. So because of that lack of punch, composers like Beethoven and Mozart did an alteration of the scale that they were using for playing in a minor key, and they called it the harmonic minor scale. And this is one of the key elements, no pun intended, of getting more richness and more actual feeling of movement when we're playing in a minor key. So it is not the natural minor scale, but rather one that's been adapted, and there are 2 others, the ascending melodic minor and the descending melodic minor, that we'll be looking at. And so I wanted to devote an entire episode to that because it gets a little tricky, but of course I've got lots of graphs and animations to show you to help everything sink in. So to illustrate once again the scales, we're going to compare the major scale and the minor scale, take a look at the differences, and then we're going to start showing what else we can do to change these things, break the rules a little bit, or maybe bend them in order to get the responses that we're looking for. So I'll be using A as the tonic since I've got the 8.5 fret. And remember that our 7-note diatonic scales for each key are a series of patterns that use the 12-note chromatic scale as a source. So if we lay out all the notes starting with A, we end up with A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, and G sharp. And yeah, it seems weird, but B and C and E and F are actually a half step apart. There are times when we would spell it B sharp or E sharp or F flat or C flat, but generally speaking, we accept those as being next to each other. Now see, this chromatic scale, all the notes are a half step apart, also known as a semitone. Diatonic scales are a pattern of whole steps, which is a tone, and half steps. There's 5 whole steps and 2 half steps for a total of 7 notes in a diatonic scale, major or minor. The pattern for the major scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Now, if we apply that pattern to the chromatic scale starting with A as the tonic, and we hop and skip using that pattern, we end up with A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp. It's 3 sharps in the key of A major, and there's our A major scale. We then figure out the 7 diatonic chords that are available for the scale by starting from each scale degree that we want to build from and skipping every other note until we have 3 notes, also known as a triad. So if we do that, that gives us A, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, and C sharp diminished. 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord. Now the pattern for the natural minor scale is a little bit different. It's whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So let's begin again with A and follow that pattern in the chromatic scale, and that's going to give us A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Notice that the sharps that were on the 3rd, 6th, and 7th notes of the scale are now natural because the minor scale, the difference between the major and the minor scale is that notes 3, 6, and 7 are brought down a half step. So we have all natural notes, no flats and no sharps in the key of A minor. So here are the chords if we build hopping and skipping and jumping. We have A minor, B diminished, C, D minor, E minor, F major, and G major. Now, this works fine, as we've discovered, but there's that lack of dominant function in the 5 and 7 chords. So we're going to use the harmonic minor scale this time instead of the natural minor. If you think about the natural minor scale as a major scale with a flatted 3rd, 6th, and 7th scale degrees, you can say that the harmonic minor is a major scale with only the 3rd and 6th scale degrees flattened. Basically, we're taking the natural minor scale and we're raising the 7th note up a half step. So we end up with this pattern: whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole and a half, and then a half step. Since a whole step is made up of 2 half steps, the whole and a half means that we're actually moving up 3 half steps between the 6th and 7th notes of the scale. Another name for that is the augmented second, because it's an interval of a major second that's been raised an additional half step. It's basically the same thing as a minor third interval, so we consider the augmented second and a minor third to be inharmonic. They're the same sound, but we call them different things depending on the context. In any case, the A minor harmonic scale is this: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G sharp. Check this out. I'm going to start off playing the A major scale. So I'll start from here. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Okay, there's the A major scale. Now we want to flatten notes 3, 6, and 7, so all the sharps are going to become naturals. And luckily, I've got half steps that will allow me to do that. They're all the narrow frets on the mountain dulcimer. So we're going to go A, B, C natural, D, E, F, G, and A. One of the great reasons to have your extra frets on the mountain dulcimer so you can pull off stuff like that. Now let's take a listen to the harmonic minor. It's going to have a very interesting sound, especially when we get to the 6th and 7th notes. Check this out. A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A. Isn't that interesting? It sounds sort of Middle Eastern, doesn't it? In fact, some people refer to this as the Mohammedan scale because it sounds like 4 notes of the jinns that are used in a lot of Middle Eastern music. Not only in Middle Eastern music, but also in Arabic music, in Turkish music, and also Indian ragas. And we can talk more about that when we get into tetrachords and so forth like that. But it's got a very, very interesting sound to it. And it's fun to have that. It's a little bit different than our natural minor by 1 note. But what does raising the 7th note do for us? Well, keeping in mind that our diatonic chords are drawn from the scale, this is going to give us some different results when we hop, skip, and jump from each scale degree. Let's take a look at what's different. Building from the tonic, we still get A, C, E for A minor. The 2nd degree is still B, D, F, and that's B diminished. But our 3rd degree is going to change from C, E, G, C major, to C, E, G sharp, which is a C augmented. That's what the plus symbol stands for. There's that word again, augmented. To augment something is to raise it a half step. The opposite of this would be to diminish something, which means to lower it a half step. So by raising the perfect 5th a half step, we're augmenting it, and the resulting chord is very, very mysterious. So we'll go from C. Now we're going to raise that 5th up a half step. And back down to C. And by the way, this chord is not diatonic. It doesn't happen naturally because we're altering the scale, and that's the result. So this would actually be considered a chromatic chord element. And in working with your other diatonic chords, it's going to give you some issues if you try to bring in the augmented third. So you could probably do another substitution and change that to just a normal C major to get the harmonies that you're looking for, because that augmented third is going to give you some heartburn in usual cases. Let's continue onwards through the scale. Fourth degree still yields a DFA for D minor, so no change there. But now we arrive at the whole reason for you using the harmonic minor scale. Remember that the fifth degree chord for a natural minor is EGB. That's an E minor chord. Though it still serves a dominant function when played in a minor key, the pull to the tonic isn't as strong as it is with a major key. Here's our E minor. And now so that would be resolving to the 1, which in this case is A minor. It's nice, but it's not as compelling as the resolution that we get when we're playing in a major key. So the harmonic minor gives us the ability now to change that. By raising the 7th degree to G sharp, we now end up with E G sharp B, which is E major built off the 5th degree. And that G sharp is now a perfect leading tone. That's a half step down from the tonic, which is A. Wow, that's nice stuff, isn't it? Very, very nice indeed. That is a solid, solid resolution. So let's keep moving along the scale. Our 6th degree remains unchanged, FAC for F major, and now we reach another critical dominant function on the altered 7th degree. Instead of GBD for a G major chord, we get G sharp BD for a G sharp diminished. So not only does the G sharp resolve up a half step to the tonic, A, but B, the minor third, also resolves up a half step to the minor third of the tonic chord, which is C natural, making this a very powerful resolution indeed. And remember that our chords that are built off the 5th and 7th scale degrees both belong in the dominant group. And so whether you use a major chord or a dominant 7th chord, or you use a diminished chord, they both serve sort of the same function, which is to take you back to the root or take you back to the tonic. And so that movement sounds a bit similar, with just a couple of notes different and the feeling different. And depending on how you're feeling, you'll either use a dominant 7th or you'll... So we've talked about how major, minor, and diminished chords all sort of work together to create all these different emotions. And with this particular combination, we end up with some really incredible harmonic changes. You can see why the great composers like to use it. Let me go ahead and move through a little movement here. Let's do A minor to F major, E major, A minor, go back to F, G sharp diminished, man, classical level unlocked. Bing! Now, in many cases, when working with minor keys, songwriters and composers will use the harmonic minor to harmonize the chords and make it more of a push-pull situation emotionally. But when it comes to melody, many people find the leap between the 6th and 7th notes a little tricky. So another scale alteration was born when composers began taking the harmonic minor scale and raising the 6th note a half step. And here's what that pattern looks like. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Again, this is another alteration. This is not naturally occurring. This is something that people did in order to make their music easier to play, easier to sing, and more pleasurable to listen to. So what that gives us with this new scale is A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. It's basically a major scale with a flatted third degree. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and then our A. It's intended for use when melodies are going upwards, and then the natural minor scale is used for melodies that are coming down. For that reason, they were referred to as the ascending melodic minor and the descending melodic minor, and they sound like this when they're played one after the other. These two melodic minor scales are really about working with melody. You can still reharmonize the chords, and that changes a couple of things. First of all, the tonic remains the same, A minor. B diminished becomes B minor, B, D, F sharp. C augmented is the same. D minor becomes D major, D, F sharp, A. E major remains the same, and F major becomes F sharp diminished, F sharp, A, and C. G sharp diminished remains the same as well. So the ascending melodic minor chords would be A minor, B minor, C augmented, D major, E major, F sharp diminished, and G sharp diminished. Now that's just for the ascending. For your descending, the chords are going to be the same as the natural minor. Coming down, G major, F major, E minor, D minor, C major, B diminished, and A minor. So looking at the ascending and the descending chords, you can see that we have a number of chords that share the same root. Is that going to be a problem? Not at all. Just remember that when you're using the ascending melodic minor for melodies, just to use the chords that are associated with the ascending melodic scale, melodic minor scale. And when you're using the descending melodic minor for your melodies, then switch over to the chords that are being used for the descending melodic minor scale, and they'll play well together like we do in the natural minor and also in our basic major key. What's even better is that all of the rules of functional harmony still apply even in the minor key. Remember that the tonic, subdominant, and dominant chord groups and our song, going from G, subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. A subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. Now we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to do it in a minor key. So we're going to take one of our chords from the subdominant group, D minor, and then we'll go to our E major. In fact, let me do D minor up here. And then our E major, dominant, and then our tonic. Subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. That's spooky. Subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. Boo, spooky. So for the past 7 weeks, we've been spending a lot of time learning about the diatonic nature of playing in a key, playing with those 7 notes of the scale for melody, and then also having those 7 chords for harmonizing that melody and how to move those progressions around. Lots of rules of the game in order to kind of think about how things move. But now we've gotten to a point where we are starting to change things up a little bit and alter this and alter that, kind of like a cook might decide to take a recipe and make it their own by adding a dash of this or a dash of that. And this is where things get really, really interesting. So thank you for joining me for the past 7 weeks. Next week, we are going to open up the doors of chaos and start making some changes by looking at chromaticism in music, getting away from playing just inside of that diatonic box and reaching outside of that box to pull in other chromatic notes and chords to really spice up our dishes. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. Have fun with your studies. I'm going to be on my way to the Walnut Valley Festival in Winfield, Kansas. So I'm actually shooting the next episode for next week now, after I finish this one, and it'll be up waiting for you a week from Friday. No dates, just a week from Friday. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.